Good morning, everyone. My name is Opeyemi Olaoye, and thanks for joining. If this is your first time joining us, I want to say very big thank you for taking out your time to join us. And if you've been in our previous section, we also want to say welcome back. Today we'll be speaking mostly on getting funding for grad school. But before I go deep into that, I'm just gonna tell you guys this section is brought to you by STEM. This section is brought to you by STEM Girls Initiative. And what we do in SGI, we're a team of professionals, like we empower women in STEM to build a successful career. We also aim to empower and inspire young women through offering mentorship and various opportunities. We hope that through this program, towards the end, like at the end of the program, not only will the women of our initiative be recognized among their peers, but we also would have been able to increase awareness of women potential. We also try to open doors to reach fullest potential and also have a rewarding career. That's what we do in short. But I'll speak more about that, like in case you're looking for a mentor and you would like to join us, I'll speak more about that towards the end of the section. So to dive right in, today we'll be speaking more on getting funding for grad school. I know one of the biggest issues is when you get an admission, the next thing that comes to your mind is how do I fund the admission? National school fees abroad can be very, very expensive. Like it can be overwhelming in such a way that makes you start thinking, do I actually pursue this opportunity or not? And it's also factor in the fact that when you're even trying to apply for admission, not even you've gotten the admission, like you even taking the step to say, oh, I want to go to grad school. One of the things that actually stop people from going ahead to apply is funding. And that's the main reason why we decided to bring together ladies, like amazing ladies who were fortunate enough to have this opportunity to get funding and scholarship from various opportunities, and they'll be sharing their stories with us. So it'll be more of their experience. They'll be sharing more of their experiences with us, like a personal experience. Of course, everybody, the way it's done in US is different from the way it's done in UK, and it's different from the way it's done in Canada. And I'm sure everybody have their own preference of where they would like to actually pursue. And that's the reason why we decided to bring people from different regions. So, without further stories or speaking too much, we will just go right in. And just for information, please make use of the chat room. Please, we want to know you. Now you know my name. I'm Mokoyemi Olayi. I'm the founder of STEM Girls Initiative, and we have a lot of mentors that we work together. I also want to know you. What's your name? Can you tell me your name? Like in the chat room, tell us your name. What you do. If you're a student, that's fine. What course you're studying. If you're working already, like what's your job role? We just want to know you. Someone is in the chat room that will be moderating the chat room. And also, if you have questions, please make use of the chat room for questions and answers. Please pour it out. Like we want this session to be very, very engaging and interactive. So make use of the chat room for questions. I will be right there moderating everything and taking care of your questions. While we await on questions, and I would actually say dive in. So we'll be starting with our first guest speaker today in ascending order, like alphabetical order, Canada. Please join me and welcome Timmy Idris.
Hi, good afternoon. What time is it? Yes, afternoon or evening in Nigeria. My name is Timi Idris. I have a bachelor's in sociology from University of Lagos, Nigeria, and a master's of arts in criminology from St. Mary's University, which is in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. Previously, I was the International Student Work Experience Program Coordinator at Dalhousie University, which is in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. And I currently work at a nonprofit organization for marginalized populations. I do research on white collar crime and crime in the government. So I'm a criminologist, and that is what I do research on, but I don't do research on individual crimes, but on social structures and institutions. And most of my work engages in activities that that strive for a more just and equitable society. What I love doing is writing, dancing. I watch a lot of crime shows, especially Law and Order, especially the one from like 1990. So that's me. Next slide, please. So, what I'll be talking on is from my experience, and the other speakers will talk about their own experience. So, I think what was unique, well, not unique, but for me, what I really focused on was from my undergrad, I made sure I had good grades because I knew my goals and I knew that I wanted to do further studies. So that was really, really important for me. So I finished from Unilag with very, very good grades, and I did I knew the course I wanted to study. So my research was limited to the schools in Canada that had those the course I wanted to study, which is criminology. And I contacted the program coordinators of the school, the people that were in charge of admission. I emailed them, I asked questions, I called when I could, and I feel like sometimes this helps as it makes you have a personal connection with the program coordinator. And even if they can admit you for a particular year, they'll tell you like what you can do to improve your application, and they'll basically look out for you. And it's very, very important for you to apply early. Um, for me, this really helped as most of my documents took a really, really long time to get to Canada. For the school I went to, you can't send your documents through email. You have to send it by post. And the admission period is like it ends in February, and that's during the winter. And the snow affects how fast mail gets to places. So you have to put that into consideration. And applying early leaves you enough time to look out for more resources and making sure that like your application folder, all the documents that you're putting together is top notch. For me, I had to write a research proposal, and my research proposal, I not only touched on why I wanted to study what I wanted to study, what I wanted to research on, but picking like faculty in the school that you want to go to, so that you have a connection with them, so that they know that you've done your research and you've gone through their department, and they can kind of match you, especially because you need a supervisor for your research. So you have to make sure that your documents arrive in time. You can call them and tell them, well, I've already sent my documents, but I don't know what's going on and they've not arrived. So just continue tracking it and making sure that your statement of interest, your research proposal, your what's the name of that thing? Your references. Yes. Be very, very particular about your references. For me in Unilag, we're always chasing lecturers, so it was kind of hard for me to get references, especially like because I had to post it and I couldn't depend on them to use their own money to post my references for me. But I was serving in Kano at that time, so I had to ask a friend to help me to go to Unilag and actually collect the references from the lecturers and post it for me. Then in Canada or in my school and in my province, what I've noticed is that most course-based degrees do not come with funding. If you're doing like computer science, MBA, I haven't had any experience of someone telling me that they're doing those courses and they got funding. But mine was a thesis-based degree, and for thesis-based degrees in the school I went to, you get funding. So that's something that you should take in mind. You should put in mind when you're looking at grad school funding. Like, are you going to do a thesis or are you going to do courses? Next slide, please. Yes, and one thing that you should put in mind is the nitty-gritty about the funding that you're getting. So for me, I got funding from three sources. I got it from a research fellowship. I got it from the Faculty of Graduate Studies at my school, and I got it from a research and teaching assistantship. But there are some funding that you cannot mix and match. You cannot have one and then add on top of it. It is only that one that you can get. So you have to ask questions and you have to make sure that what you're getting, you can add more to it if you still need more money. There are some that they'll give you plenty and it will be able to cover all your tuition and all your other expenses. But there are some that it's little and you might have to find more. but you have to ask questions like, can I get more? Can I join 3 different sources together or more than 3? And also, apart from this funding, the funding that I got from my university, I also did competitions. There's something called a 3-minute thesis, and I did competition for that and I won. So I got money from that source too. In Canada, there's also the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council that gives funding, and for the pure sciences, they have something that is called EarnCirc. Also, I worked at the Research Ethics Board at my university. So there are different other sources of funding, like from the province I work or I am in. There's also the social graduate scholarship, and you can get money from that. Also, if your research is useful to the society that you live in, you might be able to plug into like what company or what organization would be able to fund this research, and they might have money that they can give you. Then you also have to note, is it renewable? Is my degree was 2 years, so my funding had to be renewed every year. Not all funding is like that. There some is just an entrance scholarship and that's it. After your first year, that's it. So if it is renewable, what do you have to do to maintain the funding? Do you have to maintain a particular grade? Do you have to do like other work on campus? Do you have to be in a leadership role or something? You have to have those questions. You have to ask those questions, and you have to ensure that you're doing the right thing. You're not defaulting on your funding. And also, sometimes when they send your admission letter, you see this big amount of money, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get this money immediately. But sometimes it's not like that. They don't. Well, for me, they didn't give me as a lump sum. They gave me a salary and also each semester. So I had to register for the semester before I got the money. And also because I was working as a teaching assistant and a research assistant, I was getting it as salary every 2 weeks. I think I'm done. But next slide. Oh yeah. So these are a few schools that has funding that I really researched on when I was coming here. St. Mary's University is the school I went to. Then York, University of Manitoba, and University of Alberta. For Simon Fraser University, why I put it there is that they don't have international differential fees. So you pay the same amount as domestic students. In other places in Canada, you pay like ×3 of domestic students. So for the funding I got, my classmates that were domestic students, they had a lot of take home. Like when they paid their tuition, they still had change on top of it, like that would be for them and they could use for their living expenses. But I didn't really have that. Maybe I only had maybe like $500 extra. So you have to be. So for that, I only had $500 extra. So when you go to Simon Fraser, you have a lot you can use on accommodation, feeding, and other things like that. So that's it. Thank you for having me. And if you have questions, you can contact me at my email.
Thanks, Timmy.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So moving on, we'll be moving on to the next person from Canada. I'm sure she's also going to be speaking about our own experience might be unique, or it's of course it's unique. So moving to Taiwo Aramide. Taiwo, are you there?
Hello. Hi. My name is Aramide Taiwo, and I got my first degree from University of Ilorin in Nigeria. I studied industrial chemistry, and I did 2 master's programs. The first one was pure chemistry at University of Saskatchewan, and I got full funding for that. And then the second one, environmental science from Thompson University, and I got partial funding for that. So I worked as a quality control associate at New Gold Mining last year. And throughout all the years of my master's, I was a STEM volunteer for the chemistry department. So I designed different chemistry lab experiments for high school students and also for first year undergraduates. I love reading. I love writing articles that promote education and innovation for young adults. I also love cooking. So I'll be sharing some tips that I think you'd find useful when sourcing for funding for your master's degree. Can you go to the next slide, please? One thing that worked for me was having a strong academic CV. So your academic CV is quite different from your regular job CV. So this is the one that you present that shows all your academic journey from your high school and especially your university, your first degree. So in your academic CV, you want to highlight um, things that are going to make you stand out, like your leadership skills. If you were a leader in any department, if you got any award, if you did any personal research, if you did any undergraduate thesis and stuff like that, those things give you an edge when you're applying for funding. So how I did mine was I had an academic CV and then I also had a statement of interest. So this is like a letter that you're writing to your potential supervisor. So both of my masters were research based, so I needed to have a research supervisor that I was working with directly. So the statement of interest is like a letter that tells your supervisor or your potential supervisor what you intend to do in the master's program. So you talk about what you've done so far and how it's going to contribute to what you're going to do. So this statement of interest has to be very unique. If you go onto Google to find out how to write statement of interest, you're going to see lots of templates, but you want to be careful not to just copy and paste or just edit. Make it unique and make it tell a story. Put your best foot forward. Highlight your previous awards, skills that relate to your graduate program, like project execution, if you published any research articles on your undergraduate, if you did any volunteering, and also make sure to highlight your soft skills like creative thinking, technical writing, and your ability to work independently. As a matter of fact, you want to prove to your potential research supervisor that you're able to work all by yourself, which is why you might want to leave a research proposal as well. It means that you've done your research, you've thought about what you want to do for your master's, and you have an idea of how you're going to pull that through of options of potential supervisors for my research-based programs. My first school that I went to was University of Saskatchewan, but when I did my application, I applied to a couple of other schools as well. And when I emailed my supervisor, we had a conversation. And after the first conversation, I let him know my intentions. And then it was in the second conversation that I sent him my academic CV and my statement of interest. And so when he read all of that, I also let him know in the email that I've gone through his publications and I've seen what he's doing. And so I was able to explain how what I want to do relates with what he's doing and how I fit into his research group. So that convinced him as well. And you're going to have to find references for recommendation. And you want to be sure that your reference is going to be honest and is on your side. You want to make sure of that. So it's good to have a conversation with your reference, which could be your undergraduate thesis supervisor, like a project supervisor, or one of your lecturers that you did well in their class, or you had a relationship with, a school relationship with. And also have an editor for your application documents. Now, your application documents are going to determine, what, in my case, how or if you're going to get funding. So if you have really good application documents, if your academic CV highlights your good points, which also includes your grade, if you have good GPA, and your statement of interest is catchy, then you would get basically the minimum funding. But if your supervisor finds it really interesting, then there might be other awards, other funding that he himself would introduce to you based on your academic standing. And then when I said have an editor for your application documents, it's better to have somebody else look at what you've written and all your documents to make sure that you have the right words and the right statements and you're communicating exactly what you think, so you don't have any errors. Can you go to the next slide, please? So when you've secured that funding, you should inquire for more sources of funding. And examples are teaching assistantship and fellowships. So for some schools like University of Saskatchewan, the funding is incorporated, or the teaching assistant fellowships is incorporated in the general funding. You want to inquire that as well. So if you're getting the funding, you expect to teach as well. So you're not getting, but that's different for other schools. My second master's at TRU, the funding, the general funding is different from the teaching assistant funding. So you want to be sure how much you're getting and where exactly the funding is coming from. Now, there are also other sources of funding like research and other trusts. I took on some other projects during my master's, and they paid me handsomely. There are also awards like departmental awards, there are provincial awards, there are national awards, there are competitions that you can get into, and there are scholarships as well, like NSEC for sciences and CFI. CFI is the Canadian Fund for Innovators, I think, yeah. And then when you have all of this funding, or when you've gotten your funding, you want to calculate how much you're going to receive per month. So, like the first speaker said, you're not going to get all of it at once. So, my first funding was, I think, close to $30,000, and I had to divide that by 12 months so I could have an idea of how much I'll be getting at the end of each month. Then you want to calculate your expense as well. How much is your school fee? How much is your rent? And then if your funding is able to cover all of these expenses, then you have a good foundation to start with, and then you can accumulate other expenses, other fundings rather. But if you discover that your funding is not able to cover your fees, your rent, and others, you want to make sure you've gotten all sources of funding before you start, so you don't put a strain on yourself. And then also, do not take rejection too personal. You need to get over it quickly. So when I did my application for University of Saskatchewan, I applied to several other schools, and for some reason, I did not get the funding. For some of them, I got the admission, and I did not get enough funding to sustain me for the time being. So I had to turn them down. And some I didn't even get the admission at all. But for U of S, I got funding, and it was more than enough to cover my fees, my rent, and other expenses. So that's why I took that. So you may get rejected. Your potential supervisor may tell you that they don't have enough funding, they don't have a slot for you this year. So you don't take the rejection too personal, just move on to your next available option. Next slide, please. So I have a list of schools here that have funding for international students. U of S, University of Saskatchewan, University of Manitoba, Memorial, University of Newfoundland. They also have funding for international students. University of Toronto, University of Waterloo, University of Alberta is quite popular for having funding for international students. University of Calgary, York University, UBC, University of British Columbia, Queen's University, and McGill University. But what you want to ensure is that for your program, the school has enough funding for what you want to do. For example, like there are some courses that are simply course-based. Most of them don't have funding, but if you're taking a research-based course, then you're most likely going to get funding. So the fact that a school offers funding for international students does not mean you're automatically going to get funding. You want to find out if it is applicable to that specific program. That's something to also take note of. And I think that is all from me today. Thank you.